Judge, Jury, Executioner. So that's the name that I've given this army list for now. With the renaming of the executioners for the Dark Elves into Dread Judges for the Dread Elves. So I've been struggling with making an army list with Dread Elves focused on infantry that I like, and I think that this might get closer to something that I appreciate. But I think it's difficult to get a very interesting Dread Elf army that is not just too matchup dependent. So, for example, this army is still quite vulnerable to shooting and ranged output of any kind, basically. But anyway, we'll just get into the list. So the list is basically just an Oracle, Wizard, Master on Witchcraft to mitigate any ranged output that your opponent might have. Captain with Fleet Commander on a Pegasus, who can Vanguard together with the Corsairs to effectively have a, if you drop for first turn, a move of 28 inches. And then you have a Pegasus at the back of the enemy army, basically. So right now he has a lance. I think I'm gonna switch over to a great weapon later, just for more grindy type of damage output. Then in core we have the aforementioned Corsairs, 2 units of Dark Raiders, some Mage Bunker, and a couple of Blades of Nab, just because I had to round out my core. And then in special you've already seen it. We have 6 units of 10 Dread Judges with a champion. These guys are remarkably cheap nowadays. These units, they strike pretty hard with the Cult of Nab, so they have hatred. So you have offensive 5, you have agility 5, you strike with a great weapon, so you'll most likely hit on 3 or 4s with hatred, and then you have strength 6 with lethal strike and multiple wounds 2 against standard size. So that's pretty killy. So I guess most units will not match them in terms of model per model damage output. A lot of ranked units will just grind them out, I think. But then again, if you're able to just charge in some very valuable targets of the opponent, like the general and the BSB, they're quite often also on foot or standard size. So you can, with the multiple wounds too, quite easily remove this from the opponent's list if you get access to them with any of your units. It's a really Amazulu list, as you can see. Also if you lose one of these units, it's not the worst, basically. I'll just have it a go and see how it works. So the matchup is going to be Empire of Sunstyle. This is an army that a friend of mine wanted to play, and he was quite eager about it. And so we're both testing a new army, basically. And I wanted to give him a bit of a fair shot. Like, if you pair up the army that he's fielding against my Vampire Covenant, I don't think it's gonna put any dent into the vampires. Chaos might just suffer a whole lot from this, so I would just have to wait for the Helmar markers to develop over time. And the last army that I play, Empire against Empire, I wouldn't really know how interesting that would be. So I just went with Dread Elves, and as I already mentioned, probably a gunline kind of matchup is not the best matchup for this army, so it's a bit of a hard test for the Dread Elves. So my opponent would like to test units of 10 riders with repeater guns and heavy armor. So as you can see, the list features 2 of these units. And the thoughts are, well, you have 30 shots per unit, you have Vanguard, you hit normally on a 4+, short range, 5+ long range, and you can very easily cast Cosmology number 1 for a +1 to hit. You get a lot of shots out of them, and they can really put a dent into a lot of units. The only concern I had was that, well, if you have to move with the units, they're not gonna shoot that hard, and they're still quite vulnerable. Like, for every rider that you lose 3 shots out of the unit. So yeah, it obviously shoots quite hard, but it also takes damage quite hard. Yeah. So anyway, let's get into the battle. So in terms of spells, with my Wizard Master, I took Raven's Wing, Deceptive Glamour, Twisted Effigy, and Will o' the Wisp. And with the Yema Dark Acolytes, I took Breath of Corruption and the Grave Calls. The Medusa has the bound spell for Deceptive Glamour, and I think that's also one of the reasons to include the Medusa, so you have two sources to lower the agility of your opponent, just in these matchups where that really makes a big difference. My opponent took Altered Sight, obviously, for the +1 to hit on the Riders. Then he took Flaming Swords, which is kind of good with the War Machines and the Crossbowmen. Pyroclastic Flow, and Scorching Salvo, which is basically the spell that I want to dispel every single turn because I'm playing Emizu Elves. So let's go to some army pictures. So first, the Dread Elves, it's still an army in construction, so I only took some pictures of stuff that has already been painted. As you can see, the basing is quite simple, but I don't know if I want to make it a bit more complicated or not. So it's kind of a marble effect, but yeah, I don't know if it's missing something or so. If you have some comments about that, please let me know. Then for the Empire, you can see that well, this is the part of the battle line of the Empire. Let's go into the battle. So we played Refused Flank and King of the Hill. My opponent was able to choose deployment side, for which I was very grateful, because I really wanted to take the first turn against this gunline kind of army. And I took the field on the bottom for my opponent to get into, and he took the ruins on the left for me to get into. So yeah, against this gunline, I just want to drop as quickly as possible, basically. I could have given my opponent the opportunity to also deploy a bit, but then he's gonna have the first turn, and he's gonna be able to shoot with this Rider somewhere where I'm not gonna be happy with it. For example, he's gonna be able to vanguard into the ruins with a unit of Riders, shoot from there. I'm gonna have to deal with that. So depending on the positioning of his Riders at that time, I could maybe counter deploy a bit, but I think still it was a good idea to just drop first. And then yeah, what I do is basically I just flood the entire field. So I was thinking that probably my opponent would be attracted by the ruins and the wall on the left. So I put my Cauldron and Mage all the way on the right just to speed up that part of the table. I kept the Dark Raiders a little bit to my left because I also expected the Riders to come there. And also the Vanguarding Corsairs with the BSB to speed up my BSB there. But basically, well, probably that was not the best thing to do in hindsight, but we're gonna see that later also. Yeah, so the rest of the field is just crowded with executioners or with dread judges. And then my opponent, he was trying to deploy in a corner, but he is lacking space. So yeah, his thoughts were that he could just bunch up his army in like 1/4 of the table, but he is struggling with just the footprints of all his units. And then these units of Riders, they actually also have quite a big footprint. So in the end, he does manage to put his army all the way on the flank. But there are some issues in his deployment, like for example the Hellblaster is, or the volley gun is in a nice position behind the wall, but there's some units in front of it, so it's going to be difficult to get some shots through. Anyway, he's castling up quite nicely, but I'm not too worried about the shooting that he's deploying on the left, because either it's going to get blocked by his own units. Yeah, that's mostly it. Yeah, so at this point I'm still quite confident about the matchup, because I do have Witchcraft, and I do have well, a lot of units that each of them, if they end up in his units in a 1-to-1 fight, I will make him take a break test. You can see I adjusted the camera a little bit, or the table a little bit actually, just to be able to see the deployment of my opponent a bit better. So yeah, he deployed basically his entire army, and then he was stuck with the Reiter units, and he didn't really know where to go with those. So he had one that went in front of the heavy infantry block, and the other one just in the open field to the right. But I thought I could remove both of the units like this quite easily. One of the units with the combined shooting in my list, so the 2 units of Dark Raiders, the Corsairs, and the crossbows on the Raptor Chariot. And the other unit just by wrapping up the flank with my units on the right. Surely I would take some damage from that, but then again, if he removes one of my units, it's like 235 points. If I remove his unit of Riders, it's 350 points. It's a deal that I'm really willing to make. Yeah, so that's the end of the deployment. Knowing that I'm playing Witchcraft, I wasn't too unhappy about the deployment. Yeah, and I'm just gonna try and rush in and see if I can put a dent in his army. So turn 1 goes to the Dread Elves. Yeah, I'm just moving up as quickly as I can, basically, just to get to him as fast as possible. Considering cover for some of my units a little bit, but not too much, just because I'm gonna have some units that will not have any cover. So the Dark Acolytes, they are just barely touching the woods, so they do have cover. If he's gonna charge in with any of the Riders, I'm very happy about that. If he's gonna charge in with the Flaglants, he's gonna do some damage, but at least I'm not getting shot. And then next turn I could remove the Flaglants by counter-charging with my troops and overrunning. So yeah, if my opponent is going to charge there, I'm also quite happy. And then on the left flank, I think I misplayed the Dark Raiders a little bit by going into the ruins, because if I flee, I'm gonna have to take dangerous terrain tests. If I move now, I have to take dangerous terrain tests. Unless I just advance. If I advance, I'm out in the open and I don't have any cover, so they're not really in the right position there. They should have just gone to the center, I think, as the Riders were there anyway also. And they are better at countering the Riders than doing anything else on the flank there. Yeah, so on the right I just move up, and I try to, I should have abandoned the left flank more than I actually have, because my opponent just mainly focused on locking that down, and yeah, Empire, if you approach it from the side, you're gonna quite easily roll up over it. So my opponent misjudged the range on Twisted Effigy. It's actually 36 inches, so my Oracle is able to get to the Flagland block. So in my magic phase, I move up my Dark Acolytes even more with Raven's Wing. So I think I did the misplay there, because it's not really worth the hits on the Riders. And yeah, I just tried to go for a panic test, but it didn't happen. So probably the better play would have been to cast it on the Dread Judges in front of the wall, just to move them up behind the Dark Acolyte, so that on the second turn I would have been able to declare charge against the Riders had they remained in the position where they were, and benefit from hard cover by being behind the Dark Acolytes. I do get the Twisted Effigy off. I also get twice the extra movement attribute, so I put him on the Dread Judges all the way on the right. Some shooting, light shooting, kills off a couple more of the Riders. And I should mention, I believe, that the list that I'm playing is still very light on ranged output, so I think normal armies would be able to, if they get first turn, to remove at least one unit of Riders before the Empire first turn. Yeah, so my opponent's first turn, he charges in with his Electoral Cavalry onto my Dark Raiders. So I don't want them there because he can overrun into my Medusa and BSB. I don't have a good counter charge set up there. So as it happens, my Dread Judges that were behind the BSB also flee. from the panic test, and then he redirects into the Dark Raiders on the left. I feel like I should flee there because I maybe I should have held there, yeah. So he also charges with the flagellants onto the Corsairs. I don't want any of that yet, so I'm also gonna flee there. And then yeah, so my left flank, I should have also already in turn 1 made up my mind about leaving it basically, and then just having 2 infantry blocks there that just protect my flank basically. But on the other hand, it's also the objective for the end of the game. But then again, the end of the game is still far away, so I still have plenty of time. So my opponent just moves up his flagellants in front of the acolytes. I think that was a good play, because he probably doesn't want to just go in and have to face an overrun check. Otherwise, he's just going to try and shoot me off. So the fact that the Dread Judges in the middle of the board, they failed the panic check on a rerollable leadership 8, that was disappointing to me, because this takes out a bit of the pressure from my army onto his army, because it just takes out the momentum of what you're doing. Yeah, and otherwise he's just reorganizing his lines a little bit, and then later we'll get to shooting. In the shooting phase on the left flank, not a lot happens. The Riders that were in the middle, they also don't get a lot of shots off, so they don't really perform very well. The Riders on the right, however, they got the cosmology +1 to hit on them, basically also because I don't want any scorching salvo on me. So they do get the +1 to hit, so they are forced to hit. They have 15 shots, so they are able to shoot at the unit of Dread Judges that has been given the movement buffs, and they do manage to wipe out the entire unit. They were within 12 inches of the cauldron, so they did have a 6+ Aegis, but I didn't make any of the Aegis saves on the 10 wounds that he did. And then as a consequence, also the unit of Dread Judges next to them flees, even though they were at discipline 9. So maybe I should have kept the BSB a little bit closer there. But then again, getting 10 wounds, not making any of the ward saves or the Aegis saves was already quite unfortunate. So, but this is actually the point in the battle where I'm already like, yeah, okay, this is not going to be a good battle for me. Well, if you look at my battle line now, like half of it is fleeing, and it takes a long time to come back with units that don't have feint flight and did not voluntarily flee with feint flight. Because next turn I'm gonna rally, then I'm gonna be able to move back up in the position where I started, and then from then on I can get back into the game. So it's a delay for these units of 2 turns, and that's too much. That's really too much. So maybe I should play this army with a Dread Prince and a BSB with big bubbles, so like on Manticores or something. But yeah, I'm not really sure. I would say that the Cauldron also gives you some advantages, mostly in the Swift Stride on the Dread Judges, but you can also solve that with a couple of Banner of the Relentless Company banners, like 2 or so. But then your units get quite expensive quite quickly. Because now I have the Cauldron in there to just give them Swift Stride, the 1 round where it matters. But you don't really advance faster with a Cauldron. And the 6+ Aegis is nice, but it doesn't really do a lot. Death Trance is also kinda nice, but with the Dread Judges with strength 6, I don't believe it's that necessary. So yeah, so I think I did maybe, yeah. He also took up 2 of the Dark Acolytes on the right. I tried to get them out of sight so that they would survive for a bit longer, because having a Breath of Corruption and Grave Calls is very useful against his riders. And the rest of the army just advances up, and I try to still put some pressure on my opponent, but as you can see from the top of the field, it doesn't really happen. Like, my army is just too late now. My BSB does go into the riders on the left, and I'm going to kill quite a couple there. But in the magic phase, we first have the magic phase, and nothing really happens. Like, I cast Breath of Corruption now, Grave Calls onto the riders, and I don't make the roll. So yeah, that was also unfortunate. But luckily the BSB does manage to go through the Rider unit, and I overrun into the Flagellants, which is actually not really what I wanted. So maybe I should have not overrun there, and instead have chosen to flee the next turn. Yeah, I should have played this army a bit slower, probably. Yeah, so my hopes were there that the Dread Judges would also end up in the Flagellants on the left, and then I would have been able to do the combat right away, and then still have a chance at kicking out my opponent's valuable assets on the left flank. I didn't manage to charge with the Dread Judges, but I should have paid more attention to that. So my opponent is in a favorable situation here, where he can charge the flank of my my Pegasus BSB with his Runefang Lord in a unit that also has a champion. So his Flagellants have a champion, so he's first gonna accept or issue a challenge with this champion of his Flagellants, which I have to accept. I'm gonna probably get a lot of overkill onto his champion, but then again he has a charge in the flank, and he has the minimized leadership on his knight unit, so he's probably gonna stick around. And then the next turn he's gonna be able to challenge or hit my BSB with his Knight Commander with the Runefang, so he has like 4+ to hit. Yeah, he has 4+ to hit. But any of these hits are gonna be direct wounds onto my BSB, whilst I have a 3 strength 4 attacks and a Pegasus to try and knock off his Knight Commander, so that's not gonna be successful probably. So this turn he has to reposition his Rider unit on the right, so the shooting output is going to be quite a bit worse than the previous round, luckily for me. But yeah, as you can see, I'm not really putting any pressure on my opponent's army, basically also because I could only just rally my Blades of Nap now. My Corsairs are still running, my Dark Raiders, they continue to run. I only have half of the units that I should have, and I'm just losing guys minute by minute as I'm crawling towards my opponent's army. So it's definitely not going well. There's probably quite some things that I could have done better, which I already mentioned some of. And yeah, I must say that I do believe that the Witchcraft really helps out in this matchup. Because the random movement prevents shooting off your enemy, even though the range is only 18 inches. The Raven's Wing is really helpful. Twisted Effigy is really helpful. Yeah, so those are really helpful spells, and then it complements quite nicely with the Yema Acolytes that can make sure that you get the spells through that you want to get through, because your opponent generally doesn't want 2d6 strength 6 hits on any of his units. And Breath of Corruption is also a very good spell, and having champions in all of your units enables you to have it anywhere on the field, basically. Yeah, so I'm just removing Blades of Dread Judges from my opponent's magic and shooting. The one spell that I really wanted to prevent every single turn was Scorching Salvo. I believe last turn my opponent got it through. So he got a couple of wounds on a couple of units of Dread Judges, also on the Chariot one and on the Medusa. And yeah, this is the turn where I have to just go for go for broke really with the remaining units that I have, I feel. So I'm just declaring all of my charges that I can basically everywhere, even if they're long charges, because in situations where like this, where your opponent is clearly on the winning side, you can say like, yeah, I have to get a charge on an 11, and if I make it, it's gonna be great, and if I don't make it, well, it's gonna suck big time. But I think it's still valuable to try and make the charge in such a situation, because what you're otherwise going to do is just march up with one unit that your opponent can shoot at, and then it's in the end it's going to be no different from you failing the charge. So I do fail the charge with the Blaze of Nab on the left, for example. Had they moved up towards the opponent's lines, I don't think it would have made a big difference in the end, because I was expecting my opponent's Knight Commander unit to get out of combat this turn. So in the middle we crash into the Flagellants with the Dread Judges and the Chariot. I believe I put Swift Stride up on the Divine Altar, but I would say that by now I'm close enough to not have to make use of the Divine Altar. So I think 2 Banners of the Relentless Company might be better in this list than the inclusion of the Divine Altar. What else could I then put in the list? Maybe some just like 5 Dread Knights or so, just to speed up the army a little bit. But 5 Dread Knights might be too expensive for this. Yeah, I should still have a look at what I could do in terms of list building here. Yeah, what else? We have still the Dark Acolyte champion that's on top. He oh no, that's just the regular Dark Acolyte, sorry. So my champion there has died, so my magic phase is a bit more diluted. So yeah, what I did in magic is that I gave random movement to the riders on the top right, so they cannot shoot next turn. And I would have liked to have another unit there so I could charge him next turn, obviously. And then I also got Twisted Effigy off again on the crossbowman, but he moved his mage is still in there, I believe. Yeah. So we do blast through the Flagellants with the blades of with the Dread Judges and the Chariot, and the Judges and the Chariot, they find their respective overrun targets. And in the combat with the BSB, we kill off a lot of Flagellants with the Medusa and the Dread Judges. I believe I actually eventually kill off all of them, so that was a good one. And then my opponent gets to strike, and the Knight Commander, he I believe he issued a duel. Yeah. So my Pack Lord, he has to accept, and well, if I don't accept, he's going to strike at my Pack Lord anyway, my Pack Hero. But he fluffs his attack, so he doesn't get any hits, I believe. So my BSB still survives for another round, but he sticks in combat, so that's yeah. In the return attacks of my opponent's Flagellants, he kills off nearly the entire unit of Dread Judges. So there's just one guy left who's just there to overrun. The Medusa also makes an overrun, and then it's my opponent's turn basically. So what is then the current state of the board? Well, my opponent, he has received a couple of charges from me, and I have been able to decimate his Flagellants, so his main combat units, I would say, or at least with the highest combat output. But he still has a couple of characters that are quite annoying to my army. So, for example, this Knight Commander that he was able to charge into the Blades of Nab on the left. He has an Inquisitor that had charged Medusa that had overrun the previous turn. He still has his Inquisitor on the right, or, well, top right, with the repeater pistol. He's also light troops, has a repeater pistol. That's quite a nasty guy on his own. But luckily for me, I have now a couple of units that are locked in combat, so they cannot be shot at. It's just that, well, on the right flank, I'm just missing at least one unit of Dread Judges, and the Dread Judges in the center. By now they have recovered from the initial flee, but it's gonna take too long for them to come back. So yeah, I definitely think that I should put into Banners of the Relentless Company just to be able to clear the distance a bit quicker. So one for turn 1, one for turn 2. And then, yeah, I could consider Banners of Discipline, but if I just keep the BSB a bit more close, then it should be fine. So that kind of contradicts the playstyle of the BSB and the Corsairs, that Vanguard, and just being able to swing them behind your enemy lines. So I don't know what I should do about that. Maybe I can just get a very cheap Cult Priest BSB, kicking in at about 150 points or so, 170 points, that I'm just gonna keep at my backlines. Because I do think that the addition of a Pegasus hero to be able to swing behind your opponent's back is quite neat, and I'm never have been convinced by this Midnight Cloak, but the 3+ Aegis against ranged attacks is pretty nice. That is the nice aspect of it, but once you're in combat you lose it, so that's it's a really dubious choice in my mind. Anyway, okay, so we continue with his turn. So on the left he doesn't have a lot to worry about anymore, so he basically just cleared that out. The Dread Judge champion that was left has been shot down by the State Militia with the pistols. So a nice pistol shot in the back. And then, yeah, in the combat with the Knight Commander against my BSB was still just struggling, both of us, because he doesn't hit for some reason, which involves mainly just not rolling any 4+ on any of his attack dice. So yeah, then we go into combat. I don't know if in Magic he got another Scorching. He got another Scorching Salvo this turn off, which I tried to dispel and I failed. I just kept all my Magic dice, but I failed to dispel it. Then in combat, the Dread Judge against the Crossbowman clears the Crossbowman, and only the champion is left, and he's now facing the Inquisitor with the repeater pistol. And then in the middle, with the Chariot and the infantry of my opponent, they do stick around, but I do have my Chariot and my Dread Judge champion left. And as you can see, there's not a lot of Dread Elves on the board anymore. In terms of objective, I'm still doing well. Like, my opponent is kind of going to struggle to get into my field. I might still be able to get a scoring unit into the ruins on the left, being the Corsairs. I'm not really sure about that though. So I decide that I want to see what kind of damage output the Divine Altar itself has, and I just charge it into heavy infantry. I never played with this thing before. But, well, I believe I played with it once and I wasn't really impressed by its damage output compared to other war platform choices like the Warriors of the Dark Gods Battle Shrine, the Vermin Swarm, Plague Pendulum. Yeah, mostly these two, I think. I think they are the most commonly known war platforms. Also the Vampire Covenant Court of the Damned is also a very, very good pick, I would say. Yeah, so in the end, what does the rest of the army do? I decide that I can go for a charge onto the Reiters with my Dread Judges, but I'd rather just make sure that I can charge him next turn without any stand and shoot from his side. So I am risking a little bit there because he has the potency to just remove the unit in one go. He doesn't have his full unit though, so he's missing 3 models, so it's going to be 21 shots. That hit me on 4s, that would be on 3s, so I should still have a couple of them left, right? And then if I have like about 3 left, I think I should still be able to kill them off, because I can go in, I have the charge, I have 4 attacks, they're gonna hit and wound most likely, and then he's gonna attack back with something like 8 attacks, so that should be 2 wounds, and it's all very dicey, but it could happen that that I just wipe his unit from the board with my unit of 10 dread judges. And in the end, it's all in the dice, right? So yeah, otherwise the Blades of Nab get decimated by his Knight Commander over time. The Dread Judge and the Raptor Chariot in the middle actually managed to inflict 8 wounds on his heavy infantry unit. So they had a total of 8 attacks, and they did 8 wounds. So there was some bizarre rolling going on there, but I don't know if it really matters. So they actually, the unit broke and they pursued the units off the table, so they're not in the position that you see them in. They're actually off table by now. Yeah, then the Divine Altar, it didn't really do a lot of damage to the heavy infantry, and now it got countercharged by the Knight Commander with the Light of Sun style. My opponent is pressing for the objective with his Great Weapon Knight unit. But I do still have a unit of Dark Raiders that can maybe stop them from getting onto the objective. Or at least that was what I thought at this point in the battle, even though my opponent still has some ranged damage potential, obviously. And as we go into the magic phase, I believe my opponent got off another Scorching Salvo. And yeah, he is able to, I don't know what unit shot again, but he is able to remove my Legionnaires from the Supreme Sorcerers and the Oracle, and the Oracle flees as a consequence. The Writers are able to just completely decimate the unit of Dread Judges through some good dice rolling, so that was unfortunate. And then the State Militia, I believe, they are also able to. No, the Crossbowmen are able to remove the Corsairs from the field. So by now I only have a Raptor Chariot that's left on 1 wound, a Dread Judge Champion, an Fleeing Oracle, a unit of 5 Dark Raiders, and like 5 Witch Elves, Blades of Nab, that are engaged with a Knight Commander. Oh, and the Divine Altar that is just breaking away from the combat. So things are looking quite bleak indeed. This is definitely not going to be a win for the Dread Elves, that's for sure. But I believe it all just started in my opponent's turn 1, where I had too many units that were fleeing off the table. Also partly due to bad placement by myself. And now I'm just trying to make sure that my opponent cannot get into the objective in his turn. And yeah, the Raptor Chariot comes on the board, the Dread Judge comes on the board, so possibly I can still do some damage there. So with my magic, my Oracle also rallied. With my magic I decide to Ravenswing my Dread Judge champion over the enemy wizard, and I then proceed to shoot with my repeater crossbows on the chariot at his wizard that's out in the open. And in the end I only managed to do 1 wound, so that was really a shame. I really had hoped and also judged that I could have been quite able to remove his wizard from the field. And then the Dark Raiders, they managed to kill off some knights actually through lucky shooting. This does mean that my opponent can advance beyond the Dark Raiders towards the objective, so that was kind of a negative point right there. And he charges in with his Inquisitor onto my Executioner champion, and in the combat phase that is going to follow, you will be able to see why this Executioner champion is called a champion. He advances up with his crossbowman to be able to shoot at my Dark Raiders, but he has unwieldy, so he's going to be shooting at 6s, I believe. and otherwise it's just some board cleanup basically that he's doing. As we go into magic, this time he doesn't get a Scorching Salvo, so that's a good thing for me. He does get the Pyroclastic Flow, I believe, on the Dark Raiders, and he only removes one Dark Raider with that, because he had a terrible low roll on the amount of hits that he did. And then also for the winging, it didn't go particularly well. And otherwise, yeah, what else is happening? He flew into the Divine Altar, and yeah, his Knight Commander decided that he had rolled quite badly already for the rest of the game, so he's going to roll a bit better now. So he's going to be able to take the Divine Altar off the field, and I also didn't expect the Divine Altar to do any kind of interesting or substantial damage when it is being charged. Yeah, and then we have the combat with the Inquisitor and the Dread Judge champion. We strike at the same time because the Inquisitor goes to agility 5 on the charge. So my opponent is able to remove the Inquisitor from the field. I am able to remove the Inquisitor from the field, but he is also able to remove my Executioner champion at the same time. So they kind of strike each other's necks completely synchronized, and it's a nice dual decapitation. Yeah, so my Raptor Chariot charges in onto the mortar, because that should be an easy kill, and I should be able to get off the board like that. Maybe I should actually have gone for just shooting at his wizard to remove that from the field. The Dark Raiders, they managed to shoot off one more knight, and they managed to make my opponent's knight flee. So he's not going to get the objective, and the Oracle is still on the field, one of the few remaining Dread Elves. She had to run last time and then now rallied again. And yeah, this is nearly where the game ends. So as you can see, neither of us is going to score the objective. The Raptor Chariot doesn't manage to go through the mortar, so he gets charged in the rear by, I don't remember what that was. I believe the Knight Commander with the Light of Sun style was to have one wound remaining. The Dark Raiders are going to get removed from the field. The Sorcerer, the Oracle is gone. So there's no Dread Elf left standing anymore. Still, I did manage to do some damage to my opponent, giving it a 16-4 in the end. I think my list could be tweaked a little bit better, and I think it might work actually in the end, because this is also quite a hard matchup for the list, because there's a lot of shooting in the opponent's army. So I'm definitely going to look further into it and try to optimize it a bit. But for now, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next time.